Part 16. I became the richest man in the world by making meatballs. Author, Lanshan Luzi Y. Chapter 151. There was an explosion, and when they looked up, they saw the obsidian tiles where they were standing cracked and exploded, and a giant green tentacle emerged from the ground. It was thicker than Baikin Chun's condensed vines. He stood up from the ground and whipped around in a show of force. At the same time, there were explosions all over the hall, and giant green tentacles of the same shape emerged from the ground one after another, occupying the entire hall forcefully. Then they went directly into attack mode, dancing crazily and attacking humans. Ah, help! What the hell is this? A green vine like a free market. Be careful, don't grab it with your hands. There are suckers on the green tentacles, and they are slippery and have mucus. Damn, they are living creatures, they are alive. Screams rang out from all directions in the hall. The guests who were so glamorous just a minute ago lost their bearings and fled in panic. Only a few people remained calm while fleeing. Bai Qianchun glanced around with cold eyes, frowned, and threw Li Hessian, who was hanging from the vine, towards the bodyguard in black as if throwing garbage. The two bodyguards in black hurriedly went to pick him up. After picking up the young master, who was pale and ugly and coughing heartbrokenly, they could hardly hold back their similar serious faces, and they couldn't bear it. I kept scolding my mother. You didn't return the person earlier and later, but you returned the person at this time. I didn't know that the monster that suddenly appeared now is dangerous. Look at the arrogant young master who ordered them to do things before. Was directly beaten into a blood-flavored biscuit by the green tentacle, and he was probably dead. This shows the danger of this tentacle monster. If they fail to protect the eldest young master in this crisis and let him die, then the owner of the family will not be able to vent all his anger on them. Now it seems that the girl wearing the mask is not reckless, but a sinister one. Otherwise, why would he be so clever at this time? The bodyguards in black had no choice but to carry their eldest son on their backs and survive in the cracks, struggling to avoid these green tentacle monsters. Ah, boss, help me! Cao Gia couldn't dodge, and her back was sucked up by the suction cups of the tentacles and flew into the air. She clamped her legs and quickly covered her flying floral skirt and shouted for help. Cao Ting's eyelids twitched as she enlarged her tentacles, and she frowned and glanced at her granddaughter. Then she waved a golden light and cut off the suction cup behind Cao Gia. Bai Qianchun took a sip in the gap where she was dodging. Chu Chun raised his head and glanced upward, then stretched out his wrist, and a thin vine flew out, catching Cao Gia, who fell in mid-air and brought him back to the ground. After Cao Gia landed safely, she said with lingering fear in her eyes, "Wearing a skirt is really inconvenient. Not only do you run slowly, but you also worry about being exposed when you fly too high. Boss, you had the foresight to come here wearing pants. I will also attend the auction next time. Wear pants." Bai Qianchun, how unthinkable is this? Do you want to encounter such a surprise attack next time? But as soon as the words reached her throat, she swallowed them back and said, "Then you must be prepared to receive strange looks from others." Ah, Cao Gia felt that she did not have such a strong heart as the boss, so she changed her mind decisively. "Then I will wear a skirt outside my pants. This way, if an accident happens, I can still run as fast as I can without taking off my skirt." Bai Qianchun, it's up to you. The little girl is still very crisis aware. The chatting ends here, the two of them have to continue dodging. The green tentacles in the auction house were raging more and more fiercely. There were several booms and explosions, and a round green head emerged from the ground at the door, causing the rubble at the door to collapse and blocking their escape route. Security guards came in to rescue from outside. At this time, everyone also saw the true face of this green tentacle monster. It turned out to be a giant octopus. But it is a marine creature. Why does it appear here? And why is it green? While everyone was puzzled, several octopus heads rumbled out of the ground, and the danger in the hall on the first floor of the auction house increased rapidly. They couldn't care less about the reason. The alarms in their bodies were ringing, and their nerves were tense. All they could think about now was how to escape from here. But the problem now is that the walls surrounding the auction house, which are said to be indestructible even with the energy cannons of the Empire's #1 safe mecha, have become the biggest obstacle to their escape. Bai Qianchun pursed her lips tightly and glanced in Cao Ting's direction with a frown. The power of the SSS level gold type superpower came into play at this time. Golden knives emerged in the void, and those green tough like the rubber tentacles can be bruised with blood marks, which is much easier to use than her blackthorn vines. The best she can do is wrap the giant slippery tentacles with blackthorn vines, and then play tug of war with them. Even if she can make a slight wound, it will not be of much use. This is what she has experienced after living for so long. This is the first time that my claws are so numb, I don't know how to deal with the enemy. She glanced sideways at Cao Jiajia, who was hiding and panting next to her, and said, "Go to your uncle's place." "What about you, boss?" Cao Jiajia obviously realized that Bai Qianchun's vines were useless against these octopus tentacles, and asked worriedly. "Bai Qianchun, I don't have to worry. I can't hurt them, but it's okay to avoid them." Cao Jiajia, who realized that following the boss would be a burden, remained silent, nodded immediately, and let Bai Qianchun use vines to send her to her grandfather. After she was no longer burdened, Bai Qianchun felt much more relaxed. She was able to shuttle through the raging tentacles by herself, as nimbly as a fish. Cao Jiajia looked nervously over here. Sure enough, the boss's agility and speed were sealed by her just now. She is guilty. Save me, you bitch." A shrill and angry sound sounded, and Bai Qianchun looked up subconsciously, and saw at the entrance of a passage, Li Hang changed from being timid and weak, and pushed out a young master in a tattered suit with a ruthless look on his face. The green tentacles immediately sucked the man in and hit the wall with the tentacles with a bang. Blood splattered everywhere. After the green tentacles left, the man changed beyond recognition and turned into a bloody paste and slowly slid down the wall. "Tisk, how cruel." Bai Qianchun frowned and saw Li Hang, who had used someone else's gun to block his death, staggering away towards the passage inside. The giant tentacle chasing her stopped chasing her after hitting the entrance of the passage a few times but was unable to chase her smoothly. It turned around and attacked other living people. Bai Qianchun's eyes flashed. "Yes, you can go upstairs and find a window to escape. I wonder if there are windows upstairs in the auction house. I became the richest man in the world by making meatballs." Author, Lanshan Luzi. Chapter 152. Probably because the auction house ensures the safety of the stored items, the security facilities inside are very good. There are no windows in the hall on this floor at all. The four walls are all made of materials that cannot be penetrated by mecha energy cannons. Unfortunately, they had taken care of the windows and walls, but they had forgotten about the underground, which gave the group of strange green octopuses an opportunity to take advantage of them. Bai Qianchun didn't know what the layout was like on the second floor, but she raised her head and glanced at the ceiling. The vibration coming from above seemed to have happened, and it was probably not very safe. She thought for a while, but did not call Cao Jiajia. She chased Li Hang and planned to go to the second floor to explore the way first. The passage Li Hang took was a small passage for staff. There was only one way, so he couldn't go wrong. After turning around the passage with the dim night light, he reached the stairwell. Compared to the dangerous chaos outside, it's eerily quiet here. Suddenly a scream came from the front. It was Li Hang's voice. Bai Qianchun narrowed her eyes and stepped up the stairs at a faster pace. When she reached the steps of the second floor, she saw the small door at the stairwell of the second floor opened. Li Hang stood facing the light, screaming and jumping on her feet, patting his body desperately. Is this because the body is out of coordination or because the mind is crazy? She took a few steps forward, and when the light became brighter, she saw clearly that Li Hang was not beating herself, but slapping the black and scarlet ants about the thickness of her thumb that were crawling up her body. Those ants were a bit bigger than ordinary ants. The key was that they also had two sharp and thick jaws with bright red blood stains and minced meat on them. They looked very evil at first glance. What's even more chilling is that these ants are not just one or two, but many, densely packed swarms. The 4 or 5 ants that have climbed up Li Hang's body are just the vanguard, and the group crawling in front of her feet that's the main force. It would be terrifying to wait for them to crawl over and drown people. They can definitely achieve the achievement of eating people without spitting out their bones. Obviously Li Hang had also thought of this. Bai Qianchun saw a gloomy clenched teeth on her face that had been bitten by ants, and then took out 2 bottles of medicine from the space. Bang bang, she smashed the 2 bottles into the ant pile on the ground. The glass exploded, and the white gas liquid inside splashed everywhere. The dense ant colony was immediately soaked in the liquid. As long as the ants were stained, all the ants struggled violently, and then were chemical corrosion. In the blink of an eye, only a few scattered ones were still alive, but they avoided the liquid and the corroded corpses of their companions. Li Hang was overjoyed, shook his body, shook off the 3 remaining ants in one go, trampled them to death with his feet, then took out a few bottles from the space button, and kept smashing them into the ants in front of him. It really made her find a way to survive. Bai Qianchun, who never saw Li Hang turn around, touched his nose behind him, and simply followed him leisurely as if there was someone who was opening the way. The layout of the second floor is the same as that of the first floor. After the stairwell is a dark passage. At this time, the passage is also crawling with ants. However, it is probably because the large troops behind them did not have time. It is just that the passage is denser on the ground and there is only one on the wall. A small number of unsociable prickly heads. But as long as they ran fast, the ones on the wall couldn't threaten them. Li Hang was very fast. Bai Qianchun used the ancient martial arts and ran forward silently, almost behind Li Hang. After a while, they came out of the passage and saw the appearance of the hall on the second floor. Compared with the first floor where people can still run and jump around and survive in cracks, the situation on the second floor is like a hell on earth, which is dizzying. Bai Qianchun couldn't help but gasp when she saw it. Everywhere she looked was densely packed with ants. There were a few flying ants on the ground, on the walls, on the ceiling, and even in mid-air. No, I should say man-eating ants. Help me! A lady wearing an expensive gemstone necklace plopped down not far from them. With a look of deep fear on her well-maintained face, she looked in their direction and asked for help. Before Bai Qianchun opened her mouth and had time to react, she saw that her entire body was covered and submerged by dense man-eating ants almost in the blink of an eye. 15 seconds later, the ant colony dispersed, and the lady who had thrown herself to the ground disappeared without a trace. Only the few bitten holes on the ground and the gemstone necklace that was later abandoned by the man-eating ants were left. It proves that there was someone here before. Bai Qianchun stared at the gems with blank eyes, feeling creepy all over. Looking up to the lobby on the second floor, there were actually quite a lot of people left. But as soon as she thought about it, she understood that the guests on the second floor were more distinguished than those on the first floor. They were richer and more powerful, and they would not be stingy about buying a few expensive personal defense shields to wear for their own safety. In such a dangerous situation as now, the defensive shield has a place to be used. Therefore, there are many people who are still alive, but there are also a few unlucky ones who don't have personal defense shields, as well as bodyguards and waiters. They can only scream and scream. The ant colony is trying to survive. Now there are no personal defense shields that are still alive. Most people have fire powers, but it's a pity that the man-eating ants appear in piles and can't be burned out. Bai Qian-chun, who was dragged up and suspended in mid-air by a vine, slapped away several man-eating ants flying toward her, her face sullen and ugly. She was thinking whether she should go back to the first floor and play hide-and-seek with the big green octopus, or should she continue to play hide-and-seek with the man-eating ants here to survive. Before she could think about it, she saw that Li Heng had already taken action. With strange excitement on her face, she touched a wall. First, she smashed several bottles of potion on the wall to drive away the man-eating ants. And then she didn't know what she did, but she saw a door shape appear on the wall, and the door opened. Li Heng got in quickly and quickly closed the door. Bai Qian-chun's eyes suddenly lit up, and the vines on her hands swooped over and got stuck on the crack of the door that was about to close. Then she pursed her lips, and the vines on her wrists came out in strands. She patted away the flying ants around and then followed her toes. Flew towards the door quickly. When she reached the wall, she stretched out her hand and pulled the edge of the door. With a slight exertion, the crack in the door widened until it could accommodate her, and she ducked in. Then she quickly pulled out Carmen's vines and gently pulled the door open. Superior. After such a delay, a few of those ant colonies inevitably followed. Bai Qian-chun frowned, and first turned around and took a look inside. Fortunately, a wood-carved architrave stand was set up here to separate the room from the door. He glanced through the hollow archaeological shelf and saw that Li Heng was facing the one inside. Walking towards her sofa with his back to her, no, to be precise, he should be walking towards the man sitting on the sofa. Bai Qian-chun thought for a moment, and since the two people inside didn't notice her coming in, she might as well just stay silent and carefully deal with the few man-eating ants that came in, and then listen to what Li Heng planned to plot. Li Heng's weird expression of excitement before he came in just now was unusual. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I became the richest man in the world by making meatballs. Author, Lanshan Luzi. Chapter 153. Who are you? Get out of here dash. Suddenly, a man's deep and hoarse angry voice came from the room, followed by a bang, as if something heavy was hit on the shelf. The whole shelf collapsed, and everything on it fell with a clang. Land. Bai Qian-chun, who had just carefully poked the ants with a small wooden stick, immediately became alert, stood up straight, and quickly turned around to look. I saw Li Heng, who was still alive and kicking just now, completely trapped in the messy shelf. A blood hole was pierced on her fair and thin right shoulder, and bright red blood was coming out. After a while, the silver corsage on her shoulder it was dyed into a dazzling bright red blood flower, and the broken wine bottles and small mecha models stored on the shelf were all smashed on her body, and there were blood stains on her arms, making her look miserable. Ahem. Li Heng endured the severe pain and coughed twice. He stretched out his hands to pull away the shield that hid his face. He raised his head from the wreckage with difficulty, revealing a delicate little face that was as pale as paper and had 3 tragic blood marks. His face, his eyes full of fear and shock, looked at the man opposite him. He was crazy and muttering, "It's impossible, it's impossible. This is a medicine I prepared myself. There is no medicine in the interstellar world yet. Absolutely no one can. I found out. You should treat me as your most important person, you should treat me as your wife. Why would you attack your wife?" With his back pressed against the door, Bai Qian-chun's mouth twitched as he pretended not to exist, because his wife was fake. But why is the most important person his wife? This doubt was quickly put aside by Bai Qian-chun. She was now more interested in the fact that Li Heng could actually prepare medicine with such efficacy. He seemed to have some talent in pharmaceuticals. Also, the medicine used to destroy the ant colony before was not sulfuric acid but had the effect of strong sulfuric acid. It was quite similar to corpse water, and it did not look like something available on the interstellar market. It's just a pity that all her talents were not used in the right way. After feeling regretful, Bai Qianchun quickly turned his attention away from her. She raised her eyelashes and locked her eyes with the man standing opposite the sofa who was looking in this direction. At this time, the man frowned slightly, his beautiful peach blossom eyes were a little blurry and irritable, and his tight thin lips were stained with wine. He looked so sexy that it made people want to kiss him. He had a handsome face. The cheeks turned rouge, and the whole face looked even more terrifying. Such a perfect male temptress, coupled with his huge net worth, no wonder he is like Tang monk meat and has so many women following him. Bai Qianchun paused, her eyes slightly moved away from his face and fell on his white collarbone. The light blue tie on his collar has disappeared, and several buttons have been torn open, revealing his prominent Adam's apple, well-defined collarbones and looming white chest, coupled with that lustful face. Just looking at it makes me extremely angry. Anyway, he looks much more pleasing to the eye than the similarly dressed Li Hessian I saw before. This is the correct display of male hormones and charm. Feng Yuyu's peach blossom eyes stared in her direction tightly, and the deep and blurred eyes seemed to be lit up with light. When he saw some beautiful scenery, his eyebrows relaxed, and his irritable mood became cheerful. Then he walked around the sofa and walked towards the side with a pair of long, slender, and powerful legs. Bai Qianchun's dark eyes flashed, and she quietly stepped back with her heels. Li Heng, who was lying in the wreckage of the bogu shelf, looked at the man walking towards her, her pale and delicate face flushed with excitement, and she said excitedly, I knew it couldn't be wrong, Feng Master, I am your wife, come here quickly, I am. The corners of her mouth that were about to raise stopped abruptly at this moment, and she saw the man who was filled with slight joy just now lowered his head and looked at her. His peach blossom eyes turned into a look of strong disgust in the blink of an eye, and he was deeply disgusted. Staring at Li Heng, he seemed to be seeing a bedbug. Then he raised a slender jade-like hand, and the golden light on his hand turned into a fist and violently struck the bedbug directly. Boom! Li Heng suffered another heavy blow, and a mouthful of blood spurted out immediately. Her body curled up into a shrimp shape, with a look of disbelief on her face. Then she tilted her head and passed out completely. The boga frame that suffered the blow also fell apart, and Li Heng was buried under the broken board with several bangs, leaving only two white arms exposed. Ah, it turns out that an important female supporting role was violently killed by a man. I don't know whether she died or not. Bai Qianchun didn't think there was anything wrong with Feng Yuyu's actions. Li Heng was responsible for everything and was the first to commit the crime. Before the giant golden fist in the man's hand dissipated after beating him, he raised his head and looked in her direction with that domineering gesture. Bai Qianchun pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes in alertness. She was a little suspicious of Li Heng's medicine. The medicine was not as effective as what she said. How could she become a violent maniac? So should she hit or not? Should we take the opportunity to make a heavy move or take the opportunity to make a heavy move? Bai Qianchun's dark eyes were full of seriousness, but her heart was filled with excitement. But the man opposite didn't play his cards according to the rules. The monster's face changed from the cruel and ruthless one before, and his violent emotions were withdrawn. His delicate and handsome eyebrows stretched, and he showed her a bright and harmless smile. The golden hand in his hand, the fist turned into golden light and dissipated around him, and sparkling light fell on him. The handsome and enchanting face was like a god who had just come down from the sky and opened his arms towards her. A low moan escaped from his smiling thin lips, wife. The raised corners of Bai Qianchun's mouth suddenly collapsed and couldn't help but pull down, followed by a sneer, sure enough, you took the wrong medicine and your brain is damaged. Don't worry, I will help you wake up. Being immersed in the illusion that he had married a wife who would suit his wishes, Fenyuya was completely unaware of the crisis. He had killed the bad woman who coveted him and was waiting for a kiss from his wife as a reward. For this reason, he also deliberately smiled very nicely. He remembered that his friend said that he could please his wife just by smiling. However, the next second, his wife came over and pinched the back of his destiny's neck. As lightly as she pinched the neck of a kitten, she carried him into the bathroom in the private room, followed by the cold water slapped on his face, bringing him back to the real world. Gililu. Once again, his head was pushed into the pool without mercy. Fenyuya spit out a few mouthfuls of bubbles in the water. The delicate mood and pink bubbles that had just risen because he called the wrong wife were popped again. The red color at the base of the ears was also cooled down by the icy cold water penetrating through the mouth and nose. Cool and refreshing. Hey, this woman, the ancient doctor, must be seeking revenge. He has evidence. I became the richest man in the world by making meatballs. Author, Lanshan Luzi. Chapter 154. A minute later, Fenyuya held his head wet, and the water droplets on his hair fell drop by drop on his expensive suit, but he didn't notice it at all, and stared at the woman opposite him with red eyes and an angry smile. Bai Qianchun wiped her fingers carefully with a towel, and looked back innocently with her dark eyes. I'm helping you. Fenyuya raised her thin lips mockingly. Help me? Do you need to push me into the water 18 times? A full 18 times. Bai Qianchun, I'm afraid you're not awake yet. If you press it a few more times, the effect will be better. Fenyuya's blood surged up, and he said angrily with red eyes, I struggled, I shouted to wake up, but you woman pretended to be deaf and dumb and couldn't hear. Bai Qianchun wiped her hands with a towel and said suspiciously, did you really shout? I seem to have only heard you calling my wife, so I thought you weren't awake yet, and you, a grown man, struggled so hard. You can't hum a woman like me, Task. This sound is not very harmful, but it is extremely insulting. With a bang, Fenyuya punched the washstand. Her whole body exploded with anger. She stared at her with red eyes and roared, you woman did this on purpose. Bai Qianchun paused, and just when Fenyuya thought she was about to reflect, her dark eyes fell on his face without emotion, and seemed to remind her with good intentions, stop your emotions, you are not doing this. It fits your usual image of a lazy and easygoing young master. When did I have such an image? Why didn't I know? Fenyuya couldn't help but cursed. This woman was just here to piss him off. Even if it's the one she has, he couldn't bear it no matter how much his face and fighting posture suited him. If he hadn't hit the woman, she would have been dead. Bai Qianchun was not afraid of his anger, faced his anger, and continued calmly, then do you still want to help with treatment? The medicine on your body has not been resolved yet, and hallucinations will probably come back in 3 minutes. Are you planning to run away? Why don't you go out and call your wife to the ant colony? If necessary, I can take a photo of it for you for free so that you can reflect on it after you wake up. Fenyuya choked, suppressed the raging anger in his heart, gritted his teeth and forced himself to calm down, and with difficulty, one word came out from between his teeth, treat. Bai Qianchun was satisfied and put the towel that had been wiped on her hands on the shelf. Acupuncture costs 1,000 stars per session. Thank you for your patronage. The anger that Fenyuya had just swallowed burst through the top of his head with a snap. He couldn't bear it any longer and he stretched out his hand to pull her shoulders. This time he had to teach this woman a lesson, telling her that a man in rage should not be provoked. But Bai Qianchun was faster than him. He leaned back, keeping his body bent backwards, then raised his right foot and kicked Fenyuya's stretched out wrist. Fenyuya's brain was a little slow under the influence of the drug. Before he could pull it back, his wrist was kicked. He suddenly felt a wave of pain running from his wrist to the nerves in his brain, making his mind clearer. His deep peach blossom eyes flashed, and regardless of the pain in his wrists, he approached and chased after her. He grew up on a garbage planet and fought with countless people for resources. His skills are not weak. His eldest sister is the #1 female overlord on the garbage planet, and she is invincible in defeating all the planets. However, under the guidance of her eldest sister, his skills are only a little behind. After returning to the main star, after several years of training in the military academy and the previous year of training on the front line of the Legion, his boxing and kicking skills became more refined and even more powerful. He thought that it was more than enough to deal with a woman with thin arms and legs. But the fact is that this woman is incredibly flexible. Not only did she not restrain her hands and feet in the small bathroom, she actually played with him with ease. When he punched, she reached out and wrapped her arms around him. Her whole body, she was as soft as a snake, making people want to hit her but couldn't catch her. 2 minutes later, the two men exchanged hundreds of moves and finally ended up with Fenyuyu defeated. He was pressed on the washstand with his arms cut off, and his feet were suppressed by the woman behind him, unable to move. His handsome face was once again pressed against the cold surface of the sink. Fenyuyu felt like his whole body was on fire, and the anger in his eyes was about to burst out. Why is this woman so cunning in fighting skills? She looks more experienced than him, a man who has experienced hundreds of battles. This is unscientific and makes no sense. Bai Qianchun pressed his arms and raised her eyebrows, glanced at the humiliated man in the mirror, raised her eyebrows, and said with a hint of smile in her voice without breathing any heavier, "How about it, why don't you fight? Already? Hey, hello." In the quiet bathroom, the sound of breathing gradually became heavier. Bai Qianchun realized something was wrong, looked down and saw that Fenyuyu's peach blossom eyes full of anger began to blur, the humiliation and anger on his face also disappeared, and the blush once again climbed onto his handsome cheeks. Bai Qianchun frowned. "Tisk, the effect of this medicine is quite strong." She muttered, let go of the person, and then reached for her acupuncture bag. At this moment, Fenyuyu, who was lying on the wash basin and had escaped from the restraints, turned around and hugged Bai Qianchun enthusiastically from behind. His big hands tightly held her waist, and his chin rested on her shoulders. He breathed a moist breath. Spraying on the side of her neck, she called out "wife" in a low and soft voice. Bai Qianchun's whole body suddenly exploded, goosebumps arose, and her anger surged. "How dare you take advantage of me, you bitch!" She fiercely broke open Fenyuyu's arms that were restraining her thin waist with both hands, then turned around and kicked his legs fiercely. This time Fenyuyu didn't dodge, he squatted down with his aggrieved hands on his head and let her beat and scold him. "Honey, don't be angry, don't hit your hand if it hurts." Bai Qianchun glared angrily, slapped his back with iron sand palms a few more times before stopping, and then looked at Fenyuyu, who was hugging a ball on the ground, with words. "Gan, what's going on with Li Hang's medicine?" Before, he was still violent and maniacal, but now he has changed his character into an aggrieved little sweetheart who can be beaten and scolded. Or is this man Fenyuyu just a little sweetheart by nature? Just when Bai Qianchun was thinking about whether to take a picture of him looking like this little sweetheart, he saw Fenyuyu revealing his face and looking at her carefully. His peach blossom eyes were blurry and watery, and he asked stupidly, "Wife, do you still want to fight?" "Bai Qianchun, I'm sure." This medicine poisoned his brain and made him stupid. If he didn't rescue him, he would probably be dead. She squatted down, took a deep breath to regain her composure and looked at him. "Reach over here and I'll treat you." "Oh, the little sweetheart." Fenyuyu smiled brightly at her, and then obediently stretched out her hand. Bai Qianchun chuckled. Such a silly and obedient Fenyuyu was more likable than the lazy and casual nobleman before. "Let me explain." Someone in the comments section asked why Fenyuyu and his relatives and friends, except for a cousin, ignored Bai Qianchun in the past year. 1. because Fen Yuyu was thrown to the front line after they got married. He was very busy and was struggling for life and death. He had no time to care about the main star. Because the peace agreement had not been signed, the main focus of the empire was still on the front line. Not in the mood to care about love. Shen Baining, the crown prince and others were all on the front line. 2. Because Bai Qianchun's personal wish was not to come forward and reveal his identity, Fen Yuyu left Yao Wengxian's communication as an emergency contact so that Bai Qianchun could go to him to resolve issues, but Bai Qianchun never contacted him, so we are not familiar with each other and have no interactions with each other. These have been written in the previous article. As for the male protagonist and Shen Baining, they have no other relationship, they are just brother and sister. Even if they are not related by blood, they are better than brother and sister. Shen Baining is really an assist. The outside world misunderstood their relationship before, and it was described in dreams. The fact that Fen Yuyu is the second male lead is all false. If you are still entangled with the two of them, or why the male protagonist made things difficult for the female protagonist at first sight, I can only say that this is a game between the male and female protagonists, and not all relationships are love at first sight, which needs fermentation. In the end, only Bai Qianchun bullied Fen Yuyu. If you are still not satisfied with this explanation, hey, I can only lie down and let you laugh at me. I became the richest man in the world by making meatballs. Author, Lanshan Luzi. Chapter 155. In the bathroom, the silence was suffocating, and even the air seemed to be burning with embarrassment. Fen Yu, who had been rescued and regained consciousness, had his jade ears burning as if on fire. Although he tried his best to remain calm, he still couldn't. Hey, what happened to that stupid coward look just now, squatting down with your head in your hands and being beaten and scolded? Fen Yuyu absolutely refused to admit that the guy just now was him. Although he was drugged and the effects of the drug took effect, it seemed like he was dreaming. But when he woke up, he clearly remembered what stupid things he had done in his dream just now. Impossible, that silly coward definitely can't be him. There must be something wrong with the medicine. Yes, it must be the medicine that lowers his intelligence and makes him go back to 5 years old, no, 3.5 years old. He definitely can't be any taller. That is to say, he was so stupid and like a coward before he was 3 years old. After he was 3 years old, under the guidance of his eldest sister on the garbage planet, he was able to fight with the 5-year-old fat guy in the garbage dump next door. The eldest sister said that he was so fierce in the fight that the little fat man had to bite off a piece of flesh from his fat arm. So it's definitely not his nature for him to turn into a coward just now. It's definitely caused by the effect of the medicine that reduces his intelligence. As for hugging the ancient doctor and calling his wife cough, Fen Yuyu guiltily avoided the gaze from the other side. This should probably be an accident. If you are dreaming in an illusion, anything can happen. In short, it all belongs to the woman from the Li family. Wrong. After mentally building himself up, he regained his composure, but his ears were still burning hot, and the heat didn't subside for quite a while. Ahem. Fen Yuyu put up a handsome face and tried to show off her elite style. She thanked him with a pair of peach blossom eyes twinkling. Bai Qianchun looked at him with her dark eyes exposed. You're welcome, it's a simple task, but I want to give Master Feng a piece of advice. You have to be careful next time. After all, not every time you are so lucky. A miraculous doctor like me can use treatment methods on the spot to help you relieve the effects of the medicine. As she spoke, she looked at his face meaningfully and said, outside, good-looking men should also protect their innocence. After all, he was her husband in name only, and she didn't really want to be a cuckold during the engagement. Fen Yuyu's face flushed with anger at her straightforward words, but with the previous lesson, he could only hold back the breath, gritted his teeth and said, thank you, Ms. Ancient Doctor, for reminding me. I promise that this time will be the only one an accident. Damn it, he can't be beaten, he can't be quarreled, what's the point of it, this woman is his nemesis. However, an idea suddenly flashed in his mind, and a smile appeared on his handsome face. Miss Ancient Doctor, let me transfer the money to you. 1,000 star coins is the cost of the treatment just discussed, and the other 100,000 is to thank you for treating me. Sincere help. Seeing the amount Ding Dong received, Bai Qianchun gave him an appreciative look. This man was quite good. Then, for Qian's sake, Bai Qianchun stopped talking, and walked towards the bathroom outside. He even asked Feng Yuyu to come out with him in a calm tone, and told him in a friendly way what happened outside. The tragic situation, lest he accidentally go out and be eaten by ants until all the bones and dregs are left. This is even worse than the traditional Chinese medicine just now. Hearing this, Feng Yuyu really took it seriously. This box is well sealed and has better sound insulation. It is a VIP room specially prepared for him by Li Heun. He was drugged again just now, and he only vaguely noticed a shaking. It is not clear what happened after that. His handsome brows furrowed, and he immediately picked up the optical computer to contact the outside world. How's it going? Bai Qianchun sat across from the sofa and looked over with piercing eyes. Feng Yuyu looked away uncomfortably, then coughed slightly and spoke calmly and confidently. I have the strongest signal newly developed by Feng Group that can ignore any shielding means, so there is no problem in contacting the outside world. The auction is now. The patrol guards around the hotel have been mobilized and are solving the big green seal on the first floor. If you can sit still, continue to wait for rescue in the box. If you can't wait, you can jump out of the window. In order to ensure the pleasure of the distinguished guests, the VIP boxes deliberately I gave you preferential treatment and opened a small window. After saying that, he stood up and led Bai Qianchun towards the direction where the thick purple satin curtains were hanging. The curtains were opened, and there was indeed an exquisite small window made of colorful glass in the corner. The kind that a person can get out of when he is sideways, is better than nothing. However, the window was surrounded by a thick layer of ants, and no light from the outside could shine in at all. After the heavy curtains and gauze were opened, the light inside shone out, and the ants outside felt the light source starting to violently collide with the window. Seeing the uneven colorful glass that had been chewed in just a few seconds, they could definitely imagine that it was only a matter of time before these ants broke in through the window. Feng Yuyu, who wanted to show off his money-making ability and received top-level VIP treatment, hey, these ants are really not a good thing. They are directly destroying him. Now the small window for preferential treatment has become a fatal crisis for the two people in their box every minute. He wiped his face, pulled back the curtain decisively, turned to Bai Qianchun and said seriously, I can use the metal power to weld this window shut, and we will continue to wait here for rescue. Bai Qianchun had a different idea. Can't we break out? I have two friends on the first floor. She still wasn't worried about Cao Jia and Master Cao Teng. Feng Yuyu frowned, looking up and down her petite body, completely forgetting who just held him down on the sink, unable to move. His face awkwardly revealed a bit of concern, and he said disapprovingly, your little arms and legs are not enough for these man-eating ants to chew on, especially those evolved flying man-eating ants outside the window. Not only are they more capable of chewing, they are also poisonous. One bite can cause nerve paralysis. According to surveys, the toxin of a man-eating ant can paralyze an elephant and kill it within 3 minutes. Do you think your body is stronger than that of an elephant? Bai Qianchun glanced at him lightly and said matter-of-factly, although my body is not as rough and fleshy as an elephant's, it is still more resistant to poison than an elephant's. Feng Yuyu glared at her displeased, but said firmly, no, you can't go out and take risks. If anything happens, I will still want to do business with you. You can't die now anyway. After finishing speaking, he added awkwardly, there are already patrol guards from Shaking Star on the first floor. Although they are a bit useless, there are many people. If you are still worried, my adjutant is also on the first floor. Ask him to help you find your two friends and confirm their situation. Bai Qianchun glanced at him in surprise, and then said, I'm sorry to bother you. As for who my two friends are, you should know. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I became the richest man in the world by making meatballs. Author, Lanshan Luziy. Chapter 156. Fenyuya choked, knowing that he was secretly investigating her. Looking at her dark and plain eyes, Fenyuya had to admit that this woman was really damn smart. He pursed his thin lips and lowered his head and sent a message, and Zhuangshu soon replied. He then looked up at the woman sitting at a distance from him on the sofa opposite, and said in a subtle mood, Don't worry, Master Cao. Sun Liang is fine. Now most of the green giant seal on the first floor has been cleared, and a small number of people have evacuated. They are the lucky few. Hearing this, Bai Qianchun sighed softly, then why did she come to the second floor? Just to save Fenyuya, who is about to be defiled, and enjoy the scene where he transforms into a coward? But if you think about it carefully, it doesn't seem like a bad idea. Hey, what are you thinking about? Just talk. Are you still planning to go out? Fenyuya stared at her and said angrily. This woman really didn't intend to die. Bai Qianchun came back to her senses and raised her eyes to meet Fenyuya's flaming peach blossom eyes that couldn't hide her concern. She felt a little better and looked at him with raised eyebrows at the corner of her mouth. No, I don't plan to go out, just sit here and wait for rescue. By the way, where is Li Haiyun? Fenyuya breathed a sigh of relief, leaned back and leaned lazily on the sofa, and said in a sour tone, You care about him. This kid is much luckier than us. He didn't enter the auction building and arranged manpower outside. He's just waiting for the news of his father's death to spread so that he can take over Shaking Light Star. Bai Qianchun, oh. She then asked, Then the auction was interrupted due to an accident, will it continue? Why are you asking this? Fenyuya glanced at her suspiciously, but still gave a face-saving reply, It stands to reason that we won't continue shooting, and man-eating ants and giant seals broke in, and those auction treasures are unknown. Have you saved it? Oh, Bai Qianchun responded with a frustrated voice and muttered depressedly, Then what Li Haiyun promised me before is that he will no longer be able to pay for my expenses at the auction. It turned out that she was thinking about the boy's account star coins. Fenyuya suddenly felt relieved, and then he helped her with ideas with a smile on his face, You can just ask that boy for what you need, Li Jia, the cause is great. He has gained so much wealth after taking over the Li family. Just giving you money for medicine is definitely not enough. It is reasonable for you to ask him for more things. That kid will definitely not refuse you. If he refuses, come to me. I'll help you laugh at his stinginess. Bai Qianchun. Squinting, she suspected that this man was just looking at Li Haiyun's jokes. But she was not very worried. As long as she could really go out of her way to ask Li Haiyun for something, he would not refuse. He was a shrewd and considerate man. Then the two of them looked at each other in silence. In the quiet box, you looked at me and I looked at you, playing the game of staring at each other. The game ended with Fenyuya's defeat. His whole body twisted uncomfortably a few times, and he felt as if there were ants crawling under his buttocks. He looked away first, then put his hands on the sofa, stood up directly, his eyes wandered, and his ears felt hot as he said, Me, I'll weld the windows. Bai Qianchun also moved his eyes away and looked at the door of the box thoughtfully, Then I'll catch some flying ants and come in to study their toxins. Fenyuya guessed that she had an occupational disease, nodded in understanding, paused, and then asked casually, "Are you going to make poison?" Bai Qianchun stood up and answered casually, "That's right, but I'm more interested in their paralysis effect. If some of the toxins are reduced, maybe they can be tried on the operating table for clinical paralysis." Fen Yuyu's peach blossom eyes flashed, and she said in a lazy voice, "This is a good idea. The current clinical surgical anesthetics really need to be improved. I often see cases in hospitals where the anesthesia is not effective halfway through the operation, and the patient wakes up midway." Accident news. As if he was thinking of those idiotic patients on the Star Network who had sex after waking up in the middle of the operation, Fen Yuyu widened the curve of his mouth a little more, and then said happily, "If you need a test subject, in the slag the woman lying down is your experiment." Bai Qianchun looked at him in surprise. "Are you sure that she is Miss Li, Li Heun's biological sister, and your crazy admirer? Are you so cruel to her?" Fen Yuyu chuckled, raised his chin and said, "Why, are you scared?" Then, without waiting for Bai Qianchun to speak, he spoke in a bad tone with cruelty, "Don't worry, I'm here to support you. You can experiment on this woman however you want, and it doesn't matter if you kill her. Also, I have my wife. If this woman dares to drug me, it proves that she is shameless. She is willing to be humble and have evil thoughts, which is equivalent to a crime. Don't think that a man's innocence is not innocent. Huh, even if I just killed Li Heun, there's nothing to explain." Bai Qianchun looked at him with a childish look on her face. "You're right, you can learn and apply it very well. A man's innocence is also innocent." Then she continued, "Don't worry, even if I kill someone, I will let her die from the poison of ants. As long as we don't speak, Li Heun won't know that we killed her. If you throw it out to the ant colony outside and prove it, it will definitely not affect the good cooperative relationship between you and Li Heun." After hearing this, Fen Yuyu felt a little moved, but then he quickly remembered that the woman in front of him was a ruthless person. Just pressing him coldly into the water and letting him struggle meant everything. "Why are you so kindly thinking about him now?" So he asked in a subtle and suspicious mood, "It's also to avoid affecting the cooperative relationship between you and Li Heun, right?" Bai Qianchun glanced at him, rolled her eyes, and smiled, "You're right, Li Heun also promised me to buy all the tickets for the charity auction. This matter can't be ruined because of Li Heung." Fen Yuyu. A heart that was floating in the air suddenly fell back to the ground with a bang, and he knew it. As time passed, he calmed down and looked at the back of the ancient doctor walking happily toward the door. His peach blossom eyes narrowed slightly and became narrow and deep. The seeds of doubt that had been planted in his heart began to take root. The same love of money, the same articulate speechlessness, the same wood-type superpower, and the ancient doctor happened to be on a starship that left the main star at the same time as Bai Qianchun. These 4 points are similar. It was enough for the doubt in his heart to gradually grow. But who helped her erase the surveillance of the main star airport? He withdrew his gaze, slowly lowered his eyes, and played with the metal in his hands, changing it into various shapes. He temporarily suppressed his thoughts of inquiry. After 2 days, he would know if they were the same person as long as he arrived at Muyuan Star. Personal. I became the richest man in the world by making meatballs. Author, Lanshan Luzi. Chapter 157. Sir, are you in there? There was a knock on the door, accompanied by Zhuangshu's solemn and respectful shout. Fen Yuyu sat lazily on the sofa, narrowing her narrow peach blossom eyes and looking at the ants crawling on the ground in boredom. From time to time, she glanced at the woman casually sitting on the ground dissecting the ants, as if she was afraid of it. To disturb her delicate work, he pursed his lips and did not respond in a hurry. 3 seconds later, Bai Qianchun threw the toxin-extracted ant corpse to the side. The light in his focused eyes swayed for a moment. He glanced at Li Heung's still intact body with some regret, and then turned his head to look. Fen Yu, who was sitting on the sofa, said with a regretful tone, "It seems that the outside has been cleaned up. It's so fast. I haven't had time to do my experiment yet." It was fast. It had only been 10 minutes since she opened the door and introduced the ants from outside. She had only extracted the toxins in the ants' bodies at the bottom of a bottle, and there was no time to conduct experiments on Li Haing. "Fen Yu, how about I discuss it with Li Haing and see if he can give up his love and let you take this Li Haing back to continue the experiment?" Judging from the look on his face as he touched his chin and seriously considered the feasibility, it seemed that he really had this plan. Bai Qian paused, her expression indescribable, but she had to say that she was a little moved. After all, it was hard to find live drug testers these days. Previously, Mr. Mizu had not yet found all the clinical experimenters for his yang-boosting medicine. Zhuangshu, who was outside the door, didn't hear any movement coming from inside. He frowned, with obvious urgency on his serious face. Li Haing was escorted by a group of bodyguards in black and walked into the Yaoguang Star auction house to check the situation. Even the mess and burnt ants on the ground could not stop him from walking more briskly than usual. Now he can be said to be very proud of himself. Feeling happy. Although this accident happened unexpectedly and many people died, it was a great thing for Li Haing. That idiot Li Heshan was really stupid and restless. Even a few bodyguards couldn't stop him from seeking death. On the way to evade the huge seal, he even acted like a young man, causing several bodyguards to be injured, not to mention being unable to evade. He also got involved in it. If the patrol guard outside had arrived 2 seconds later, he wouldn't have been able to breathe his last breath. But it doesn't matter if he is still alive, he is a hopeless cripple anyway. After he takes over the Li family, he can support him and earn a reputation as a respected elder brother. In this way, he can also hold back the second sister on the main star. After seeing Li Heshan's tragic situation, Li Haing tried his best to maintain a steady and serious expression. He first lamented that his elder brother had suffered such misfortune, and then comforted several bodyguards who protected Li Heshan. Not only did he not punish them, he also reassured them not to blame themselves, and promised them the medical expenses were also given as rewards and pensions to several dead bodyguards, and they received the sincere gratitude of the bodyguards. Bodyguards, after experiencing the eldest young master who committed suicide and took them to die with him, their second young master is simply an angel who saves people in trouble. Li Haing whispered to the bodyguards with a slight smile on his lips, and then led the people to check on his father's condition. His father, Li Chao, was destined to die. No one could stop him. The backstage where he was resting was the place where the green seal bore the brunt. The old man was unlucky. Before the auction house was shaken, he happened to be unwell and sat on the sofa with his eyes closed. Relax, and then the green giant chapter suddenly attacks from the ground. According to the surviving attendants, the first tentacle stretched out and directly pierced the old man's body. He didn't even have a chance to react and struggle. He was directly stabbed into a skewer and passed out, with a huge seal on his body. His tentacles were thrust back and forth in mid-air, unable to be rescued. When Li Haing came over just now, he only saw his father's body like a rag doll, with all his internal organs turned into a bloody paste. It looked very tragic. And the woman named Bai Rujuan, who his father had favored recently, was hiding in the corner, avoiding his body like a snake or a scorpion. "Tisk, old guy, you really failed as a human being. The woman who stays with you before you die is not a good thing." Li Haing curled his lips, guessing that the old man's physical discomfort should be due to the effect of the medicine given by the ancient doctor. Otherwise, the old man had been fighting in the army for many years and would not be so slow. Even if he could not avoid the first, this crisis was definitely avoided when he was poked on the tentacles of the giant chapter. But no matter what the reason was, he was already dead, completely dead. And now that there is a real clear cause of death, the suspicion of other people in the Lee family has been reduced, and he can remain innocent. After all, the sudden accident at the auction house has nothing to do with him at all. Uninformed, Lee Hae-un thought for a while and sent out a few more command messages, rearranged the layout, and then led people up to the second floor to check. As a result, not long after he came up, he saw Zhuang Shu standing outside the door with a worried look on his face. He suddenly felt a thump in his heart. Unlike other guests who came to the auction, although those people were rich and noble, most of them were insignificant. If they died, the power of the Li family could still suppress them, but Feng Yuyu was different. His identity and strength and the forces involved behind him are not covered. If something unexpected happens to him on Yeoguang Star, Lee Hae-un has no doubt that neither the Li family Yeoguang Star nor the 19th Army can afford to be behind him. The rage of power. With this thought, Lee Hae-un quickened his pace and walked towards Zhuang Shu. What happened to Mr. Feng? Zhuang Shu turned around and looked at him seriously. Second young master Li. Then he started to talk about the situation. Our parents didn't respond inside. Does Mr. Li have the authority to enter the box? Lee Hae-un nodded immediately, yes. Then he seemed to have thought of something, and said with a serious expression on his face, I remember that there are windows in the VIP box. Just now, the entire building of Yeoguangxing auction house was surrounded by ants, and the outside of the building was also covered with a thick layer of ants. They may have crawled into the box through the window. Hurry up, fire superpowers, prepare and ask someone to bring the antidote serum. After a mere orderly order was given, Lee Hae-un opened his authority, kicked open the door, and stared in the direction of the door with a group of bodyguards. Seeing that there was no danger at the door, the bogarak inside the door fell to the ground and became a wreck. Suddenly the hearts of everyone at the door jumped, and they all concluded in their hearts that something unexpected must have happened in the box. Zhuang Shu, the adjutant, was worried about the safety of his elders. The skilled man boldly rushed in first. Lee Hae-un also followed with a serious face and a more sincere feeling than caring about his father. I became the richest man in the world by making meatballs. Author, Lanshan Luzi. Chapter 158. Bai Qianchun and Feng Yuyu both turned their heads. Between them and the intruding Zhuang Shu, Lee Hae-un, and others, there was Li Haing's body that had been dragged out of the wreckage by Bai Qianchun. They stared at each other for a while. In the end, Lee Hae-un couldn't help but cough lightly. He looked down at his sister lying on the ground with a bloody shoulder, and then looked at the two people opposite, one sitting on the sofa and the other sitting on the floor. His doubts almost broke through the sky. The two people he originally thought were going to be in trouble were fine. They seemed to be enjoying themselves quite leisurely. Especially the ancient doctor lady, who was sitting on the ground and started playing with ants out of boredom. On the contrary, his sister, who he thought was still at home and didn't need to worry, was lying here with her face pale and unconscious. Lee Hae-un's gentle and handsome eyebrows frowned, and he quickly arranged for someone to come forward to rescue him. Then he looked at the two people opposite and asked meaningfully, "What's going on?" Although in order to protect his mother and sister from being used as targets and threats by his father, he has been deliberately ignoring these two people over the years, but in Lee Hae-un's heart, he still has Li Haing, his biological sister from the same mother. Seeing her miserable appearance now, he couldn't help but feel angry in his heart, but looking at the two people opposite him, he suppressed the emotion, comforting himself that it might be an accident. As if sensing his thoughts, Feng Yuyu leaned back on the sofa, lazily and arrogantly raised her chin and sneered at him, "Do you really want me to tell the good things your sister did in public?" Bai Qianchun patted his pants and stood up, making room for the rescue workers who came over. Then he walked to the sofa on the other side and sat down. His dark eyes looked at Lee Hae-un with bright eyes. Lee Hae-un's eyelids twitched as he was being stared at. He turned around and glanced at the group of people peeking out at the door of the box. They were all survivors on the second floor. Their status in the empire was not low. It was hard to escape death at this moment. He said he was going to rest, but he was very happy to watch the excitement. They had known who this box belonged to before. When they saw Lee Hae-un leading someone through the door, they followed him. If they had really seen and heard something, they might be able to brag about it for a year. The excitement of the little lord has gone to the main star, and many people are cheering for it. They must have first-hand information. So when Lee Hae-un looked over with his eyes chasing people away, they all immediately shook their heads like rattles and refused to leave, as if he dared to chase people away, they would go to death to investigate the accident at the Lucky Star auction. The group of bullies looked unable to drive away. Lee Hae-un's face was ugly and helpless. He could only look at Fen Yu in compromise, but he did not lower his attitude. I don't know what happened to my sister. Mr. Fen, I apologize on her behalf. She is still young and has lived with my mother in a side hospital all year round. She is not sensible. I also ask Mr. Fen not to argue with her. Moreover, no matter what happens, Mr. Fen has injured a little girl. This is also a settlement. There is also a sense of anger and rebuke in this sentence. Fen Yu's slender dark eyebrows raised, and her raised thin lips became more and more mocking. I don't think your sister, who can pretend to be weak, act to seduce people, and drug me, is too young. I don't think she is too young. Oh, she is so sensible. She has mastered the intrigues of women, and is even better than her previous skills. She is sure to be mature and transparent. As for the two things being cleared, well, the two things can't be cleared. I have never suffered such a big loss in my whole life. I must not swallow this breath. She must pay a greater price. Fen Yu's peach blossom eyes were filled with flames, sarcastic and angry. She looked at the stunned Lee Hae-un with a smile on her face and said, "Why, if Mr. Lee doesn't speak, does he not believe what I say? It doesn't matter, I have witnesses." As he said that, he turned to look at Bai Qian-chun, who was sitting on the sofa opposite, looking like he had nothing to do and was quietly watching a show. Meeting his eyes, Bai Qian-chun was silent. It would be fine if they were just strangers to testify for him, but there was another relationship between them. If it were made public in the future, it would be really embarrassing if it reached Lee Hae-un's ears. Will it be misunderstood as a couple joining forces to perform the immortal dance? Seeing that she didn't speak for a long time, Lee Hae-un's heart was in doubt. He looked over with hope. He still didn't believe that his sister, who grew up with a weak and kind-hearted woman like his mother, would become so crooked. Fen Yu's eyebrows twitched, and she felt uneasy. Damn it, this woman wouldn't act like a monster and go against him at this time, would she? He was trying to get Lee Hae to be her drug tester because of her. Seeing how she acted just now, she definitely wanted it. Fen Yu quickly winked at her, but you woman should speak quickly. Bai Qian-chun pursed her lips and ignored Fen Yu's eyes. She just looked at Lee Hae-un and said calmly, I don't know what happened before. I only know that after I followed your sister in, your sister did she had evil intentions towards the unconscious Lord Feng, and tried to pounce on him instead of his wife. As for whether she was the one who administered the drug, judging from her behavior, I think there is a 99% possibility. Is her. Of course, you don't have to believe me as a witness, but you can look at the evidence. Your sister is quite talented in the preparation of potions. I guess there are still relevant potions in Nuri in space. If you have wronged her, you can wake her up and compare her space. You'll know the potion in it. Fen Yu's eyes lit up. This was a clever move. It was much more reliable than the witness testimony he just mentioned. It beat the person to death. From now on, even if Lee Hae wanted to say that they had framed her, it would be useless. As soon as he said this, Lee Hae-un didn't know that Fen Yu was really not lying. He had a headache and couldn't get off. If he really found the potion, his sister's reputation would be ruined, but if he didn't continue. But at this time, the group of distinguished guests outside the door who were watching the excitement and not taking it too seriously were shouting to join Fenyuyu's camp. This girl doesn't know what happened before. We know, the youngest daughter of the Li family, I saw it, the mistress Li Chao brought to introduce to us was indeed winking pitifully at young Lord Feng in the hall just now. Yes, this little vixen is sizing us up, but we can't tell. Haha, I know women's tricks very well. I can tell at a glance that she is not forced by her little mother. She really wants to seduce young Lord Feng. Ah, you are shameless. You want to take the place of Lord Feng's wife. You can tell from her pretentious and pitiful appearance that she is an act. She is definitely not as good as Lord Feng's real wife. No wonder she and her father's mistress have such a good relationship, and they even talk about Aunt Bai. She is rushing to learn to be a mistress. Alas, this girl from the Li family is really bad. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I became the richest man in the world by making meatballs. Author, Lanshan Luzi. Chapter 159. Seeing the group of people at the door talking more and more outrageously, Li Haeun's face turned pale, but he couldn't cover their mouths. His father died just now and his eldest brother was disabled. He could justifiably take over the good mood of the Li family at this moment. It turned into fly ash and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. After being rescued by several people on the ground, the petite and frail Li Haeung let out a cry. Her small face was pale and fragile, and her eyelashes were trembling. She was already showing signs of waking up. Li Haeun took a look, and then took a deep breath. After all, he was still there. I relented. All the anger turned into helplessness. Alas, he was wrong all these years. He was the one who neglected his mother and sister, causing his sister to grow skewed. However, it is not too late to find out now, and there is still time to straighten things out. So, he solemnly apologized to Fenyuyu, put down his arrogant and noble head, and truly took on the responsibility of apologizing for his sister. In the end, Fenyuyu's idea of leaving Li Haeung to Bai Jianchun as a drug tester failed to come true, and Li Haeung was not asked in public to take out the things from Dimensional Nuri to prove it on the spot, because Li Haeun directly admitted his mistake. This matter was revealed as quickly as possible and with the least harm. Afterwards, Bai Jianchun and Fenyuyu didn't suffer any loss. She didn't know what benefits Fenyuyu had gained, but Bai Jianchun had gained a lot. The auction was interrupted, and the losses had been caused. It would not be reopened in a short period of time. Except for a few difficult customers, all the auction items were bought by Li Haeun at the highest price with his own money. All the auction items related to medicinal materials and herbs were transferred to Bai Jianchun by him, with a value of well over 1 billion, which made Bai Jianchun truly feel what generosity meant. However, Li Haeun was not just a silly person who only knew how to give away money. He took this as a good opportunity and used his excellent negotiation skills to seal Yuyu from Bai Jianchun when her favorability towards him reached its peak. I pre-ordered 10 high-end versions of Vitality pills in one step, and also received a 10% discount on future Vitality pills. However, he has not yet completely taken over the Li family and the 19th Army, and the funds have not been allocated yet, so now he can only regret that he cannot purchase in large quantities and the cooperation must be postponed. But even this made Fenyuyu, who was a step too late, almost mad. With a smile on his face, Li Haeun sent the two of them out in person. The destroyed craters of the Fluttering Star auction house looked like the entrance to a construction site. Patrol guards were running back and forth in a hurry. Amidst the hustle and bustle, the three of them picked a flat place to stop. With a warm smile on his face, Li Haeun stood opposite Bai Jianchun and said politely, "Miss Ancient Doctor, I will send you here." There are still things in the auction house that require my presence to preside over. Bai Jianchun raised the corner of her mouth and nodded slightly. I understand. Second young master Li, please do me a favor. I know the way. Fen Yu also raised his chin slightly toward him and raised the corners of his mouth. I'll send the ancient doctor back, Xiao Li, don't worry. Li Heun smiled warmly at him, but there was a dark glint in his eyes. Oh, don't worry about Master Feng. The ancient doctor lives in the nursing home next door. This means that the ancient doctor now lives in his place, and he has not let go yet. Fen Yu twitched the corner of his mouth in laughter, thinking about it, and immediately turned to look at Bai Jianchun and asked, I heard that the ancient medical lady is leaving tomorrow. I don't know where she is going. It just so happens that I have to go there tomorrow too. Leaving the shaking light star, I can give you a ride if you're on the way. Bai Jianchun's heart moved, and she thought it would be good to take a ride and save some money on the starship ticket. I'm going to Muiyuan Star, so I'll be in trouble with Master Feng. I'll leave tomorrow around the afternoon. Is Master Feng okay? Fen Yuyu's eyes flashed, with a subtle emotion, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Just in time, I'm going to Muiyuan Star too. It's a good trip. I'm not in a hurry. It's up to you to decide when to leave. After finishing speaking, he thought for a while and sent a message to Yao Wengxian, asking him not to come to Shaking Light Star, but to go directly to Muiyuan Star. Negotiations with ancient doctors to purchase elixirs had always been left to him, and Fen Yu also he has no intention of getting involved. His current focus is still on the Feng family's army, and Yao Wengxian is in charge of the Feng family group. The division of labor is very clear. Let me go, sister, save me. Li Heun, who was about to turn around and leave, paused, and Bai Jianchun and Fen Yu also looked back subconsciously. I saw a miserable-looking little girl wearing a waiter's uniform being carried out of the auction house by two serious bodyguards. When she saw Bai Jianchun turning around, the little girl's eyes suddenly lit up and she started beating excitedly. Sister, do you still remember me? We fought side by side together in the morning. Bai Jianchun narrowed her eyes, barely able to see some familiar facial features on her dirty face with disheveled hair and those highly recognizable blue eyes. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. Why are you here? Hearing her response, the little girl immediately became emboldened. She straightened her back, turned her head and glared angrily at the two bodyguards holding her, and said arrogantly, You heard it, you guys let me go quickly. I am a friend of your distinguished guest, the second young master of the Li family, and you have arrested the wrong person. Seeing her climbing up the pole and looking confident, Bai Jianchun twitched the corner of her mouth helplessly. Li Heun turned to look at Bai Jianchun. Do you know her? Bai Jianchun nodded inaudibly. Well, we probably know each other. We met twice in the free market this morning. Second young master Li should know about the turmoil in the free market. This little girl was the one who was first rescued after being caught. Source. Li Heun's eyes flashed, and he remembered the news reported to him by his subordinates before. The two bodyguards turned a deaf ear to the little girl's words, and the expressions on their faces did not change. They still fulfilled their duties and held the little girl in front of the three of them. Li Heun glanced at the little girl's dirty and angry face and asked, What's going on? The bodyguard on the left immediately reported in a serious manner, Second young master, when we were dealing with the safe, we saw this little girl sneaking around outside. After asking the foreman, he said that he did not recruit part-time waiters. We investigated the surveillance and we checked the door and found that this little girl had sneaked in with another waiter's ID card. We suspected that she was related to the accidental green seal and the man-eating ants. Swishing, brushing, three eyes looked over at the same time. The little girl who had been rolling her eyes just now, trying to get away with it, immediately became angry and yelled angrily, Hey, you silly big guy, don't blame me, I don't care about this, it has nothing to do with it. I just heard that there was a life-saving medicine in your auction, so I came to watch. It has nothing to do with those sticky big octopuses. I even helped you kill a few big octopuses. If you don't believe me, you can watch it just now. I am the hero of the surveillance. I became the richest man in the world by making meatballs. Author, Lanshan Luzi Y. Chapter 160. Having said that, the little girl felt quite aggrieved. After she came in, she was ordered to pour a lot of wine before she even started to do the work, prying the safe. Later, when she finally found a chance to touch the vault, an accident suddenly happened at the auction venue, and a huge green seal appeared. No matter how talented and bold she is, after spending the morning in the free trading market and fighting the green giant seal for 300 rounds, she doesn't have much power left, otherwise she wouldn't be defeated by these two idiots. The big bodyguard caught me and couldn't escape. Wrong Kikai was extremely depressed. Damn it, today is definitely her unlucky day. Fenyu raised the corners of his mouth, raised his peach blossom eyes lazily, and said jokingly, "Are you just observing? If you get something good from observing, are you ready to take it back with you?" Wrong Kikai looked at him with bright eyes, as if she was looking at a confidant. "Oh, my pretty brother, you are so understanding." The smile on the corner of the beautiful brother Fenyuyu's mouth froze, and his eyes became sharp. How can a man be called beautiful? Handsome, I should say he is handsome. Li Haeun turned away his face and couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth. He spoke so joyfully to her, which made him even more fond of her. Then he looked at Bai Jianchun. Does the ancient doctor think this little girl has anything to do with the giant chapter incident? Bai Jianchun was surprised. You ask me? Li Haeun nodded with a smile, yes. Bai Jianchun raised her eyebrows and did not answer directly. Instead, she chuckled and asked rhetorically, don't second young Master Li already have the answer in his heart? Li Haeun laughed happily, the ancient doctor is right. Then he looked at the two bodyguards and ordered, let me go. This little girl has nothing to do with this incident. You can go back to investigate and check the guest list and the guests invited by my father. But my father is gone now. You can ask my eldest brother. He is also half in charge of this auction. He should have the list in his hand. But please pay attention. My eldest brother is seriously injured and the news about my father is temporary. Don't let big brother know so as not to worry him and aggravate the injury. The two bodyguards were surprised for a moment, and then hesitated. They were the family head's people. To be precise, they were the people handed over to the eldest young master by the family head. Do they want to obey the second young master's orders and hide it from the eldest young master? Li Haeun was not unhappy. The smile at the corner of his mouth was still gentle and warm, and his expression was calm and unhurried, showing the aura of a superior. He doesn't care about the final decision of the two bodyguards. Regardless of whether the eldest brother knows the situation or not, the Li family and Yeo Guangxing are already in his possession now. I believe those old guys in the Li family know who to choose now. What is most beneficial to the Li family? Bai Jianchun felt the aura emanating from Li Haeun, and couldn't help but start to reflect in her heart. Although this person was considerate and gave money, he was still a cold-blooded smiling tiger who killed his father and cheated his brother for decades. She should pay more attention in the future. Fenyu angrily took his eyes away from the little girl who didn't know how to praise others, and noticed that the ancient doctor's eyes were falling on the face of Li Haeun. He frowned, his eyes swept around the masked face of the ancient doctor, and then stared at Li Haeun's smiling face. He, today is another unpleasant day for Li Haeun, especially his smiling expression. Tisk. He turned away his face, his monster face was filled with annoyance that he couldn't even detect. He simply turned away his head and took 2 steps outside to open his mind and handle a few military matters that were sent to him. The happiest person was the little girl Rong Kikai. When she heard Lee Hae-un saying that he would be released, she immediately cheered, then glared proudly at the two bodyguards, pulled out her hands and jumped to the ground towards Bai. Chien-chun happily trotted over. Sister, sister, we meet again, what a coincidence. Bai Chien-chun turned his eyes to her face, smiled and nodded, well, what a coincidence. What are you doing here? Rong Kikai's face immediately fell, and she didn't hide it from Bai Chien-chun. She began to feel aggrieved. I just want to find a medicine that can cure my savior. What kind of criminals were there in the free market before? The doctor is a fake. He only releases fake news to deceive people and attract fat sheep. After he introduced people into the store, he knocked us unconscious. The two upstarts who were in the same elevator with us were caught by him and demanded money. For ransom, beautiful girls like us are resold to the free trading market. In short, the Black Doctor is a scam. I wasted so much effort and spent so much money on starship tickets. Later I heard that there was an auction here selling a lot of medicine. I felt embarrassed to go back to see my savior empty-handed, so I planned to steal some medicine and take it back. It would be best if I could save my savior. I couldn't. Then if you resell it, it will definitely make a lot of money. Good guy, this little girl really regards Bai Chien-chun as one of her own, and she dares to say anything, even with her little mouth. If Lee Hae-un, the owner of the auction house, is still standing here, you are calling her stealing. What nonsense, are you telling the truth? Bai Chien-chun helplessly held her forehead, regretting that she had asked. The smile on Lee Hae-un's face also froze, regretting letting him go so quickly. The two bodyguards who were still struggling gave the little girl a thumbs up in their hearts. What an awesome little girl. They obeyed her without any support. They had never seen a thief so confident. Seeing that the atmosphere around her was starting to change, Bai Chien-chun coughed lightly and decisively changed the subject. What disease did your savior have? Tell me, maybe I can help you solve it. Rong Kikai's eyes lit up and she nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, yes, yes. Sister said before in the free market that I can go to your stall and have a look. Sister, do you also have medicine? I can ask you to buy it. I made a lot of money by cheating on the black market, and later I went back to the free market and asked the manager who caught me for compensation. Her small breasts puffed out, and she looked very proud. Bai Chien-chun. Needless to say, she is quite convinced of this little girl now. He silently drooled with envy in his heart, and then asked, tell me what your savior's condition is, and I will prepare the medicine for you. If you really can't explain, you can bring someone over and I will show him in person. Ah, we can't bring them here. Rong Kikai wrinkled her little face and said tangledly, someone wants to harm them, they can't leave the protection of Tianyuxing, and their health is poor and they are not suitable for long-distance travel. Them. There's more than one. Yeah, the saviors are a family of 3. In that case, you come back with me and we can find a quiet place to have a consultation via communication. From the appearance, I can also tell some of the condition. Even if it cannot be cured, it can be alleviated. Thank you, sister, but I need to ask my savior for permission. They are quite afraid of leaking the news.